It's a real thrill to introduce someone who doesn't need a long-winded introduction from me. Please welcome Billy Crystal, star and executive producer of Before.
Hi, everybody. Just a little light thing before Election Day.
You said it, I didn't. Actually, that's a good segue into my first question. So it is often said that comedy is harder than drama. And I'm wondering where you fall on this debate. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I think so. Next question. I don't know. I'm asked that all the time, and a lot recently because of the show. There's a fine line between the two, and the thing about, in particular, film comedy or comedy for television is without a live audience. Is you do the setup for the joke in September, you don't get the laugh till May. So that's always hard to, but you can refine it, you know. But with something dramatic, it's that you're in the moment, and hopefully you're directed well, and you're with a good acting partner, whatever the scene is, and you feel it. So in that point, I don't know, nothing is easy, but it's something I don't know. I just really love both of them, obviously. But I think your question is, I think it is a little bit more difficult.
For Before, you've been at this a long time. At this stage of your career, what did you learn from this project that you didn't know about yourself as an actor going in?
Just how much fun it could be covered with blood. I never knew that. It's just what I learned is that it's a never-ending process in growing and stretching and becoming more of yourself in your work. And I've been doing this almost 50 years, or just about 50 years. And when you discover new things, that's really exciting. And I loved every moment of the preparation of the show. I was one of the co-creators of it from the beginning, and then seeing it come to life and living Eli's world. As you see, we're on 4. You have 6 more episodes of the descent into madness, where he ends up finding himself without revealing anything. So that's what I learned, is that it's a never-ending process in learning and growing and making yourself a better, well-rounded actor.
You mentioned the fun of being covered in blood. Is there a particular day on set that you remember getting to do something with sort of practical effects that you were like, oh, this is gnarly, in a good way?
Yeah, the second episode, it opens with a dream that I have where Noah gets out of the hospital bed and comes over and stabs me in the neck with a pen. And it was a rig with my, it's a plastic tube that was in my hand, and the tube ran down my sleeve, across the soundstage to this very happy guy with a big pump. And it was like, as soon as it hit, I had to grab, and he had to go, and it would spurt out. And I just kept loving every second of rolling around on the floor and just I did all my own stunts in the series too. And jumping back over, falling back over the chair and just slipping and sliding. It's stuff you want to do when you're kids, you fake, being in a Dracula movie or something like that. So that's what I was doing, And I love that in particular, yeah.
I'm picturing you going many, many takes just out of the joy of rolling around in the blood.
Yeah, no. When Jet Wilkinson directed that episode, would yell "cut," I would just laugh and go, "Look at what I'm doing! I love this job."
So you also mentioned that you've been involved in the project since the conception of it. I was struck that it had a relationship to a book that you read all the way back in junior high school, The Search for Bridie Murphy. I'm wondering if you could talk about what that book is for people who don't know it, and how it ended up kind of reshaping the project for you.
Well, okay. It actually started, the inspiration were audio tapes that my late grandmother had made before she passed away, that she wanted the family to know about the origins of our family, coming from Russia, coming from so far away to America and the settling of the family in America, and how the family then some went to Houston, some went to St. Louis, some came here, and so on. And it was fascinating stuff. I mean, I hear her beautiful little voice all of these years later, and the first chapter is, my grandfather was the tailor for Tsar Nicholas. Right away, it's like, are you kidding me? And when the pogroms were about to start, he got the family out because he knew he would eventually have to kill us. This is like, crazy. So it's like, wow, this is like a romance novel, then the family coming and how everyone did. So the original idea was for this very old man, 100-year-old guy, to be talking with his gerontologist about his past, very similar to what she had done. And he had a list of people that he wanted to see. And so the mystery would be, who were these people? Where did they come from? And we thought that each year would be of the series would be a decade of the person's life, and would be really interesting story. And we couldn't really break it. And in the interim, my son-in-law asked me for a book report, a good book to read for my grandson, who was 13 at the time. And something different, something interesting. So I said, I read this book in junior high school that I don't even know why I picked it up, but I was fascinated by this book called The Search for Bridie Murphy. Does anybody know of the book? Okay. If not, it's about this 28-year-old woman, true story, who under hypnosis speaks as this woman, Bridie Murphy, from Ireland, about 200 years before, and talking about her life in the village that she grew up in, and the pastor, and the town blacksmith, and on and on and on. And it all turned out to be very accurate to what she was saying. So I thought that was like amazing, and it was very hopeful. Like, hey, maybe there's something else after this. He says to me, it's amazing you thought about, because I, at the University of Virginia, did a lot of research in kids with past life experiences. Here's this book. It's called Life Before Life. And I read it, and it's these amazing stories of these kids who present around 2, 3 years old, where they go, where's my real mommy? Where's my real daddy? Where's my family? I want to go back to my village, and stuff like that. So I thought it was just a fascinating thing. So one time we're in a writing meeting, and my partner in creating it was Eric Roth, who's a fantastic screenwriter, won the Oscar for Forrest Gump, and on and on and on. Great writer. And so we couldn't get anywhere with these young two writers from Fargo, actually. And in the middle of it, I said, well, wait a second. What if he's not 100? What if he's 8? But he has these memories of someone much older than him. What about that? And we went, now we're onto a concept. And he said, who could write this? Her name is Sarah Thorpe. She's a great writer. He worked with her on a project. He said she has a great dark head and really just able to write surreal things and bizarre. So we brought her in, told her the concept. 2 weeks later, she came back in and described this world that you're now experiencing. And in the middle of it, of her explanation, I said, Sarah, stop just for a second. I want to play this guy. I want to play. And that's how I ended up being Eli. And Sarah was a real creative force behind the creation of the show.
I'm curious what it was that you think made you so interested in the past life experiences reincarnation piece of it. Is that something that you had any level of kind of belief in yourself?
Yeah, I always had, we have deja vus. You have like, did I did this before? Did I do it? But did I have a life before is more interesting. Did I walk into this room once before? But did I walk into this room 50 years ago? Did I walk into it, 10 years ago? Who am I? Where am I? It's very fascinating stuff that I thought was really provocative.
Well, it's also an interesting way of moving between times without actually moving between times in the same sense of sort of flashbacks and flash forwards. When you talking about how this helped you figure out how to break the show, what was the process of figuring out how you were going to structure how these different elements fit together?
Well, that was Sarah's world. Once we got the commitment to make the 10 episodes, Sarah put together a really wonderful writer's room. I think we had 5 writers, and ended up 5 directors, 3 directors of photography eventually. Anyway, so I was on Broadway at the time doing the musical Mr. Saturday Night, so I wasn't really in the room with them, which I really would love to have been. But I so trusted her in this. So my one day off was Monday. So on Mondays, I would get like a shell of a script or a full script, and I'd look at it and go, "What the fuck? This I get to do this?" She wanted, and so it was really them really exploring all of these things. And along the way, I would help out a little bit in shaping, but basically it was that was the process.
I wanted to talk a little bit about working with child actors. You get to do a lot more of it in this show, than most people do in most projects. You have Rebecca Ruane, who plays Sophie in the episode that we screened tonight, and obviously Jacoby Jupe, who plays Noah. Jacoby Jupe, who plays Noah. I guess I'm curious, like, does your process change when you're working with a child actor, and how so?
All right, that's a good question. Jacoby is not a child actor to me. We auditioned 703 young actors across the United States and Canada, and we found him in London. He had just done a movie for Disney, a Peter Pan film. He was one of the Darling kids. And they loved him, and they recommended him to our friends at Paramount, who were the studio we were working with. And then he auditioned on tape, and we liked his tape. And then we decided to Zoom with him, and that was the only way we could audition him during this time. And we did. Remember the episode I did the Mad Game with the blocks, right? So we did that on Zoom. I was in L.A. here, and he was in London. I set up blocks here, and then he would do it in London at the same time, and he was extraordinary. And so we gave him the job, and it took a long time to get his visa straightened out. So I didn't actually meet him until like 7 days before we started shooting. And he was unbelievable. He's got the innate natural ability of a veteran actor. He has that sensibility. His mother's a wonderful actress, and he had a very good coach. But he's an incredibly intelligent kid. And so once I sensed that, and the first 2 times I was with him, I didn't want to rehearse with him. I didn't want to spend any more time before we started shooting, because he, as you know from the pilot, he just shows up. I wanted that freshness. And once we were on the set together, I couldn't believe how instinctual he was. And I've worked with some really great actors. He's got the same instincts at 10 as any veteran actor I've ever worked with, and great ones. I mean, he's really extraordinary. He doesn't say much. It's all here, and it's in his heart, and his rage and his fear. That's not easy things to do. And after he would do, like that scream at the end, he would do 5 or 6 takes, and I go, cut, and go, thank you, can I have a Krella? And then get right back into it. He's an amazing young kid. But so I didn't have to adjust. I was with an equal. And the same with Rebecca. It's the first thing she's ever done. And you just you don't get on your knees to talk to them. You talk to them as who they are, and then they're wonderful kids.
I was struck watching the premiere episode by just how sort of frightening Noah's presence is at the outset before you kind of know what is motivating his behavior. Why do you think creepy kids make such compelling horror television? Like, what it is about kids that freaks us out?
Because I was one. That's all of the really true unnerving, scary movies, maybe not all of them, but the ones that we remember have a kid in peril. The Exorcist, Alien, that little girl, hiding out in the spaceship with Sixth Sense. There's the vulnerability of them, the fact that they can't comprehend what's happening to them. Perhaps the same in The Exorcist, that she's possessed by this demon, and he's possessed by things that you'll find out in the next 6 episodes. What's growing inside him. I think it's just because we love kids, and we all were one. We all had fears. We all had nightmares. We all had, that's why I loved doing 20-something years ago, Monsters, Inc., but it was because when John Lasseter explained it to me, I said, I know I had pet monsters in my closet. I know that something was under the bed. Something would follow us home. We all have that. So when you touch into that dramatically, it's great.
What is it that you think Eli needs to learn from his exchanges with Noah? Like we recognize that Eli is there or thinks he's there to help Noah in his problems. But I think we also gather that Eli needs to sort of develop through this piece as well. What do you think that is that Eli needs to get from this relationship that he doesn't have in the aftermath of the death of his wife?
I think you're going to have to find that out through the show. I mean, we're both in therapy in the show. And we both, as the relationships get entangled, and remember the Corsican brothers? One would get hurt, and the other one would feel the pain, and so that's these kind of elements may happen in the show.
Speaking of psychiatry, are you someone who does much research, in preparing for a role?
Oh yeah, I mean, psychiatry. I'm the guy who cured Robert De Niro. So I mean, so if I could cure him, an 8-year-old boy with trauma is nothing. Yeah, I mean, as also because of the of his age, I had 2 kids of my own, and I have 4 grandchildren. So without needing a license for that and training, it's sort of on-the-job training. And so I wanted to treat him at times as I would, as comforting as I could be to him, but also with an angle to help cure him when he's not aware that I'm actually using therapy on him.
So one of the things that sort of struck me about the way therapy is depicted in the show is that Eli seems like a worse patient than Noah is. I'm wondering about kind of sort of your understanding of why he is so taken by this particular case, but he seems so reticent to talk about his own.
Again, counselor, these are things that I can't discuss at this point without incriminating myself. Okay. He's in denial, and the mystery of Lynn's suicide, and the questions around it. He's filled with rage, and he's filled with guilt, and he's filled with, why couldn't I help her? What did I miss? And then why did this kid come to me? And he's not doing well. She's appearing all the time, but she's there for a reason, and she's actually pushing him forward. So it's very complicated, but everyone handles grief in a different way, and guilt, and the combination of the two can be toxic, and that's what he's going through.
We learn in the 3rd episode, if I recall correctly, from Jackson, that Lynn had said of Eli that his greatest strength and his greatest weakness were his blinders. What do you think she meant by that for him in terms of your understanding of the character?
Well, he's based in science. And if it's not like he says, but things have to deal with facts, just the things that are facts. So this is throwing him for a loop because there are no facts for what he's experiencing so far. And so, he's got to look at the world and his medical knowledge and his ability to help underprivileged kids and damaged kids, that something's not right. I don't know how to do this. So he's at a loss. And when people are at a loss, they get really interesting because they get desperate.
While I have you, I would be remiss if I didn't ask about one of my favorite fall movies, When Harry Met Sally. It is a movie that I think...
You could applaud
you can applaud,
that.
Please.
You started to. It's our 35th anniversary.
And it is, I would say, one of the most cited films when you ask people what their favorite romantic comedy of all time is. And that is a genre that I think has had sort of its ups and downs, and there's now a moment of maybe a resurgence. I'm curious, from your perspective, what about the conditions in Hollywood made it possible to make all the great romantic comedies of the 80s and 90s? Like, what was behind that?
Matt, I don't know. I don't know what was behind that. We had a great script. We had a wonderful, perfect director in Rob Reiner for this. He included us in the creation, once Meg and I were in the film, of us all together working on it to make it real. It was at the perfect time in our careers and our lives to be Harry and Sally. And, you have a, wonderful, joyous set and great words to say, but with room also to play with a director who trusted. Like, the museum scene where he's falling for her and he's not sure if he is. He doesn't know what's happening to him. We're at the Temple of Dender in New York, and I said to Rob, could I try something? I want to talk in a funny voice. Because I think when you start to fall in love with someone, you trust them with your funny voice. You do something that you wouldn't do. He says, like what? And I said, let me just try it. And I don't want to tell Meg. Just see what, and if we don't, it's just film. So he says, okay, action. So I started with, I thought today we would start to talk like this. And Pepper, please repeat. And she had no idea what I was doing. And then it came to these, I'd be proud to partake of your pecan pie. And I said, please repeat after me. And she does it, and she's playing. And then when I said that, she looks, if you look at the film, she actually looks off to Rob at one point going, no, what is he doing? and it was that freedom in it, and that's, it makes the characters more real. I mean, the great moments, the Katz's Deli scene, but it's really about two people finding each other. It's romantic like crazy without pushing it, It doesn't resolve itself until the very last moment at New Year's Eve when he makes that speech to her and they finally kiss with meaning at the end of the film. And that's why I think people take it, home with them for all of these years and share it with their kids now that are old enough to fall in love, and on and on and on. It's a wonderful thing to be a part of.
It's really stood the test of time, something worth being proud of. As we're at the outset of award season, I also wanted to ask you about another thing that you have a lot of experience with, which is hosting award shows. I'm curious from the perspective of the host, like what?
Oh, Jesus.
What is the what is the hardest part of it? What's the part that
talking
is so
about it?
Yeah.
What's the hardest part of
Well, so the conversation always goes, people are critical of the host, and then people who've hosted before, like, this is such a hard job. There's even been talk in recent years of people not wanting to take the job because it's such high pressure. So I was just curious, like, what's the hardest part? What's the part that is hard to do right or do well?
It's all about your planning, your pre-production, your vision for it. When I started in 1990, but I had done 3 Grammy Awards prior to that. I had hosted the Grammys 3 times, and we had already done 3 or 4 comic reliefs with Robin and Whoopi. So I was really ready for it, but I wanted to do it differently than I had seen any host do it before. Bring something new to it. You have to bring yourself to it, not just assume the job. It's not just introducing the next, presenter. You're there to entertain. And the fact is, after the first hour and a half, every 4 out of 5 people has lost. So you're looking at an angry, hungry crowd, and you have to keep them entertained during the thing. So we would try to do things that were different. So we started with the medleys, which singing the songs of making up songs for the 5 movies. Because the year before I did it was a disaster show, which is the show with Rob Lowe was singing, to Snow White, and there was no host. It was a bad idea, and so then I presented on that show, and then they asked me to come over and do this one, and so we started with that, and then we started doing these films where I would put myself in the nominated movies, and that became a very big deal. So then you'd find something during the course of the show, another piece of funny, something else to do. And so we started doing things like I Know What They're Thinking. And it was, so you just have to really, want to be there. I've seen a lot of, they don't look like they really want to be there. And I relished the feeling of being up there and liking and being part of the movie community, and that was a big. I think it's all about your point of view and being funny throughout, and knowing also when to get out of the way, knowing when to not say anything, and we used to call them fastballs, and they call it fastball. Our next presenter is our next, because as soon as you walk out, you're 18 minutes long. So the time is, don't overstate your welcome. When it's time to throw fastballs, throw them. When you got something funny to say, just be fearless and go for it.
Well, thank you for answering that, even though it's painful to be asked. I wanted to circle back to before we run out of time. I was curious what your version of Eli's blinders is. What's the thing that you possess that you see as a strength, but can also sometimes devolve into a weakness?
Ooh. I don't know how to answer that. Maybe that's one of my blinders. I don't know. What maybe I really don't know how to say. Well, that's what becomes maybe my. I don't know how to say it right. My compassion for people, maybe. Sometimes it gets too hard to deal with certain things, like tomorrow.
On that note,
did you all vote yet?
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you.
If everyone could just remain seated while you applaud Mr. Crystal and he heads out. Thank you so much for coming out.
I'm glad that you're. Let me ask you this, though. You're enjoying the show so far. Tell your friends. Tell your, where every new show comes on Friday, except right around Thanksgiving, it's going to come on Tuesday. So, and you're in for a real ride. It gets. If you think this was intense, it gets, but it all makes sense. Like what we talked about before, right till the very last second. Like tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.